And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your...
What's up, Jimmy? How's the weather over in Florida, man?
It stinks. It goes back and forth, and stinks is the key word, Michael. Stinks.
Why? So you were saying about that, like what stinks about it?
Well, there's the gradual changes of season in New York, which allowed us to, assimilate into the next season.
I like that word, assimilate.
And you get used to it, especially after half a century. And where I live, it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you could be, during a certain time of year here, be freezing, and then the next week you could be looking at 70 degrees, and then it's back down to 40, and then it's up to it's weird, and I've had a hard time getting used to it.
How do you deal with the warm weather though in Florida? Like, because it gets pretty soupy and hot, right?
Yeah, like I said, you wind up stinking. You sweat a lot,
Well, Jimmy, I want to introduce one of our new sponsors, Mando. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Mando.
Nice.
Mando gives you a whole bunch of product, right? Body washes. Let me see if I can swing that over there, right? We've got here a whole body deodorant, which is good, right? You're at work, you're sweating, I don't know if you have a propensity to smell, dude. I'm not trying to make fun of you. You know what I mean?
Not me.
Some people, not really, dude, because I will tell you this. We've discussed it before. I get very sticky and very caught up in things. And I mean, when you spray this body spray on you, boy, oh boy, it makes a huge difference. Now, again, in New York, it's still cold, so I don't necessarily need it all the time, but I could imagine those hot summer Florida months is going to be, this will be your first or second time dealing with that.
Actually, technically, it would be my third.
Really?
Yeah, because I hit the summer 2 years ago. Don't forget, I was here in the summer of 2023. Then there's 2024. Here comes 2025. So I've experienced 3 summers here.
Well, then I bet you wish you had some Mando with you last year.
I need like a crate of Mando because I'm a fando of Mando.
Oh, I love it. Mando's starter pack is a perfect for all you new customers who ask you to support Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh, right? Use the MATP code. That's MATQ, which is showing on right there on the screen. Use that, support us. Show Mando they made the right choice in choosing one of the top pro wrestling podcasts or broadcast or television show that you could possibly have. And if you use that code, right, it equals 40% off, Jimmy. 40% off. By my math, that's close to half.
Good. Yeah,
it's a little less than Conan's math, but it's almost half. That's 40% off when you use MATP as the code, which is on that screen. 40% off. Go to Mando. That's Shop Mando, SHOPMANDO, and get your starter kit. Jimmy, how you can convince all your friends in Florida to order some Mando?
Well, first of all, I'll have to be upfront with them and tell them that they smell funny. And then I will highly recommend Mando because, you got to think before you stink.
With that, I got nothing else to say. Mando.
I'm a fan.
All right. It's hard getting used to this producing stuff. I like it we have a producer and we just talk, Jimmy. Yeah. Welcome, Gary Michael Cappetta, to the show again. Gary, what an honor. We missed you, man. It's been a long time. How are you, bud?
I'm good. It has been 2 or 3 years.
It's been a while, man. It has been a while. So
Yeah.
what's been up with you? What's new? What's happening in your life?
Since I saw you last, I relocated, so I'm in Florida now. And I was watching that commercial for the body spray, and I'm thinking maybe it was named after Mando Guerrero. Did you think?
Really?
Yeah,
That's
the
what? I
Guerrero
never thought
wrestler,
about that.
Mando Guerrero. That was what I. If you asked me how am I going to get my friends to use it, that's what I would tell them. This is what Mando used.
That's a good idea.
It all ties back to wrestling for you, huh, Guy?
It's certainly
It's a wrestling podcast, so I connect.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I love it.
Welcome
Gary,
back.
I know it's so great to see Gary,
Welcome
man.
back.
You know,
Gary's from, if I could get this in, Gary is from the earliest of the Monty and the Pharaoh days. I remember sitting outside of the old studio, Mike, right back in Huntington, and me and Gary are smoking cigarettes, and we're all sitting out there and talking about the realities of the business. I mean, Gary's right from the beginning. It's an honor to always have Gary on. That's for sure.
I may have been one of your first guests.
Yeah, I think he was.
I actually have to say that when the show was new, again, it's you're trying to make your way into the industry a little bit, and Gary gave us our first. Again, no one knew us, and Gary just came on and was just a gentleman, and again, always remember.
You were. He's not sure about that.
He was, man. I mean, look, you got to remember something, right? We, again, not by any means saying you're old, Gary, because we're old. But we grew up on you, man. But we did grow up on you.
That's for sure.
It amazes me that you keep on inviting me back. So.
Oh, come on now. You're from the very beginnings of our fans.
I'll come back.
Of course, you're on our list. So listen, I want to go over some news items, and we're going to have our little conversation with Gary.
News items?
Come on, Jimmy, we do this every show. Stop
we're going to torture Gary with our news item? Go ahead.
Yeah, we are. Because you both have to weigh in. There is more to life than wrestling, guys. Let's remember that, okay?
That's true. That's true.
Right.
That's true. Go ahead.
In the news, Sean Puffy Combs.
Oh, boy.
Lawyer quits the sex trafficking case under no circumstances. Can I continue, his lawyer says.
See ya.
One of Sean Combs' lawyers, Anthony Rico, filed a motion Thursday to withdraw as one of the Bad Boy Record's 6 defense attorneys without explanation. Rico's bid to step down won't be official until the judge signs off on it. The judge must find sufficient reason to approve such a request. This is his response. Under no circumstances can I continually be effective serving as counsel for Sean Combs. It is respectfully that I regrettably request that the court grant a relief request. Now, I got to ask you guys both on this one. Don't you get disbarred for that? Because he basically, he's stepping down. Like, if there's a trial and your lawyer quits on you, I think that's like saying, yeah, you're pretty guilty.
Can I throw in the math of it, Mike, when you read that to me, by the way?
Yeah.
Here's how I look at this, okay? I don't know if that's calling for disbarment to me. To me, it's more like he has 5 other lawyers, by the way. Let's not make it out like he lost his only lawyer. He's got 6 lawyers. Okay, so the one guy is leaving, and my gut read is that it's for moral reasons. He's finding stuff that he's not comfortable with, and he can't properly serve him, and he just wants to get the fuck away from it. Sorry for the language, GMC, but that's my gut read on it, and he wants to get away from it. Does that call for disbarment? I don't think so. I mean, it seems to me like he's learning too much that he's morally comfortable with, and he wants to get the hell out because Combs is in a lot of trouble.
I'm going to let Gary weigh in, but you know what? If you take the case as a lawyer and then you check out, I know you've got moral standards, but like you just pretty much said, you're guilty. Go ahead, Gary.
Right. Go ahead.
You said not everything in this world has something to do with wrestling, but didn't Jerry McDevitt bail on McMahon after McMahon's latest accusations were leveled at him? I think
we've got to get to that.
The guy's not going to represent you then it's all up, above board. That's not a problem with that. I had a situation. If you want to hear a story,
Sure.
I had a situation where I sued WWF at the time because I appeared on, I think it was 11 of their early Coliseum videotapes. And I also was used on their Hulk Hogan workout set. And the attorney that represented me, for some reason, stopped representing me and didn't tell me. And he stopped going to the pre-trial hearings. And the case was dismissed because of that. Now that's a slime ball. But this guy's telling everyone, that he's quitting the case. So, I don't see any problem with that.
So, Gary, did you end up winning any money from that Coliseum video?
Yeah. Because then I went and sued my attorney
Nice.
for yeah. I mean, and in order to sue your attorney for malpractice, you have to prove the underlying case. In other words, I first had to prove that the original case against McMahon was a good case, was a valid case. So we did that, and then and I won. The guy was disbarred in New York, and I got a judgment.
Why did you even have to put through that process? What was the situation with Vince? That must have really bothered you that you had to take it to that level.
Well, this is another story. If you want to hear another story, years ago, back early '80s, when just before WrestleMania, before Vince went nationwide, one night at a local indie high school wrestling, not indie, a local WWF high school show, Arnold Skolin shows up, puts his briefcase on the table in the locker room, opens his briefcase, takes out a stack of papers, and slaps them on the table. And he makes an announcement to everyone: before you leave, you have to sign these papers. Everyone has to take one and sign it and return it to me. And what they were release forms, so that Vinny could use your wrestling, your interviews, anything that you did with him, and he wouldn't have to pay you for it. I took one of the forms and I put it in my gear and I never returned it. So I never signed a release. So when they came out and started marketing these Coliseum videos, which I didn't even know about until people started coming up and telling me about them, they had no right to do that because I never signed a contract with them. And I was an independent contractor, but I still never signed a contract with WWF. So I sued them.
Good for you, because
That's
you know what?
another story.
It seems kind of unfair that they were muscling people to go sign this release to begin with. I got to tell you, some stuff.
To make it legal, in exchange for signing the contract and giving it back, they were going to give, I think it was either a penny or $1 you would get in exchange, and that would release all of your rights for any way that they want to use your performance.
Wow, that's some bad math. Mike, I got to do this though. Mike's on record, and I got to get your thoughts on this. That Samantha Irvin is the greatest ring announcer of all time. Okay, I obviously disagree with that severely, but there's all sorts of degrees. Folks, for those of you out there who aren't familiar with our guest tonight's body of work, to me, he's the most accomplished all-around professional wrestling announcer in the history of this business. And if I could jump in a little further, we're talking WWF, we're talking WCW, we're talking, later on with Ring of Honor, we're just talking, he's basically done everything. He's most well-rounded. So as far as I'm concerned, on paper, you've got the championship. What's your take on ring announcers in general? Have you paid any attention to Samantha Irvin? And in your opinion, who is the greatest ring announcer of all time? That's a lot right there. I apologize, but what do you say?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh,
I already gave my
okay.
answer, and
Yeah,
that's
he's
because
got Samantha Irvin as the greatest ring announcer of all time, and I understand she's been great, especially for this generation. She's great. I ain't
well,
saying
she's
she's not
also
great.
really
She's
hot too.
she's
So that
great.
that
She's
helps.
great at what she does. But watching as long as we have, and it does go back to the '70s. What's your take on Samantha Irvin, and who is the greatest ring announcer of all time? Fire away.
Yes, she's very talented. It just depends on what you're gauging. The best of all time, the best in what way? I mean, there are a lot of metrics that, for instance, when you do live TV, like this lady did, there are certain skills that are important, right? So I did live TV. I had certain skills. She had certain skills. But when you do a live show, non-TV, there are other skills that you need to do, to have. When you have to make an announcement to the audience that they're not going to like let's say the main event didn't show up that night, or the night at the Meadowlands when I had to announce that Ric Flair was no longer with WCW. That's a whole other skill set. I mean, how you deliver that message. So, it depends. It's very difficult to compare the same role of today with when I did it, because they're different skill sets that are needed. I had the same skill sets that she did, but I had others because I had to do other things. I was on the road 200 nights a year, so I was mostly on at live shows. Plus, and then we had our Clash of Champions, which is more like their Raw and SmackDown these days. So yeah, I mean, she's fine. Everybody has their own style, and not one style is the best.
What are your thought processes on the style changes of ring announcing though that has gone on recently, making it more like a big boxing match or a pay-per-view? You know what I'm saying? They kind of change the style. Were you guys?
Yeah.
I guess my question to you, Gary, in both WCW and WWE, did they try to curtail you and your ring announcing, or were they let you do whatever you wanted?
Yeah, no, there was only one time when I was given any direction in all the years that I did it. So no, it was what I felt worked for the product, because the products that I announced were very different, and my experience level was very different throughout too. So when I was doing WWE TV, I did that for 8 years, and I was with them for 11 years, and I was just learning. And then I went to the AWA, and that was a very different kind of a presentation. They were just different wrestlers. And then NWA, before WCW, which was like a kick-ass kind of backstreet brawl kind of wrestling. I think the big difference is, in general, what I did was more of a sports presentation, and it was frowned upon to call attention to yourself back then. It was always to put the wrestlers over, they're the stars. So I would not have given an exaggerated kind of introduction, because that's not what we did back then. Today, it's different. I mean, if I had used the style that Samantha uses today, or when she was with WWE back in 1978, they would have thrown me out. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
It
So
wasn't
just like
because I was supposed to be a background. I was a prop sometimes that the guys used. They would bounce me around, or I would run away from them, or whatever would happen. But they would always bring that to me. I would never initiate anything that brought attention to myself. So it was a whole different mindset. Mostly, I was a sports-based presentation ring announcer,
right.
and they're entertainers. They're different.
All right. Well, tonight, guys, in just maybe another 10 or 15 minutes, this guy is returning to SmackDown, The Rock, saying that he's got something in store, and people are worried right now that it's going to upset. He's using his power. He's going to upset the eventual WrestleMania main event. My question to you, Gary, is I don't know how much you're watching nowadays wrestling, but do you think the WWE is continually making a mistake by bringing the older guys back like Dwayne Johnson and not consistently relying on their current category of wrestlers or their current roster?
I'm pretty, well, as far as he's different than most others because, of his notoriety. And doesn't he own a piece of the pie now?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't he?
Yeah,
Isn't he a major stockholder in the company?
He's the final boss, for real.
I knew you were going to say that.
Right. So it's not a choice as to whether we're going to bring him in or not. He's probably saying, "I'll tell you when I'll be there."
Yeah, right. Do you think, though,
and
that
the
in
only
negative...
one that I know of that fits into that category is John Cena, and supposedly, 2025 is his last tour.
That should be his last goal.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's a great feature, for the shows as they present, going forward. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for that. I
think that, as I was thinking about Gary's time. It's all about time shift, right, Mike? It's all about the different generations. So to me, it doesn't matter if you're a wrestler or a ring announcer. As things change, wrestling styles change. As things change, ring announcing styles change. Gary, to you, who do you feel is the most influential as to where we wound up today with pro wrestling? Who is the most influential pro wrestler in pro wrestling history? Who impacted the most? Who changed the most about what we see today?
Probably Hogan. Probably Hogan because he was the first transformational wrestler who was presented on many different platforms, on legit TV, on talk shows, in the movies. I think that was the model, and others followed that model. That would be my answer.
That's beautiful.
I'm not saying I think he was a great wrestler. I'm not saying I think he was a great actor. But
we're definitely not saying that.
No. So he had success, and then you can't take that away from him.
He was good in Rocky 3. I liked him in Rocky 3. Thunder Lips was fine. Everything thereafter, not so sure about. Mike might have a different opinion. No Holds Barred is his Orson Welles Citizen Kane.
Yeah, he's great in No Holds Barred. That was one of the finest acting jobs in the history of Hollywood.
Stop it. That's hard.
Jimmy, that's a great question. Gary, since we got you here, I got to ask you this question then. A few years ago, Jimmy and I had the honor of having Bob Backlund in studio with us. Growing up, obviously, we hated Backlund, right? Because we were these bad guy heel fans. But obviously, when we got older, the respect that we have for Bob Backlund. And you know what? When we met the guy, he was exactly Bob Backlund. And he just seemed like such an honest, straightforward guy. I guess my question to you is this, though, is a lot of people remember Bob Backlund as being this not very good champion who couldn't draw a house, and that Senior had to pack the events in order to sell out Madison Square Garden and the Spectrum. We weren't there, right? As fans, we didn't know the inside. When we went there, it was always packed. Is that true, or was Backlund the capable champion that we think he is?
Capable is one of those malleable words that means a lot of different things. Wrestling wise, of course he was terrific. But I think you're asking me about the draw. Vince Sr. did have a very strong undercard for Backlund in the large arenas. And I don't think he would have done that if he didn't think that it was necessary. Although it was his decision, his insistence that Backlund be his champion. He was determined for Backlund to gain success. I don't think he ever gained the success that McMahon Sr. Envisioned or wanted. But Backlund he's a super guy. He's a really nice guy, very down to earth. He really is an all-American guy.
Yeah.
His wrestling is incredible. His conditioning was always, the best, not the most charismatic. And but that's I guess you can't have you can't be 100% in every single category.
Well, then here's another loaded, Jimmy, 1 second. Here's another loaded question then.
Yeah, loaded.
You said that Senior, just felt like he had to keep going with this. Did Senior make a mistake not keeping superstar Billy Graham the champion?
Ooh.
How would we know? I mean, it's not like we can look at what happened and then we can switch over to another alternate universe with superstar Billy Graham as the champion for longer and compare the two. There's no way to know that.
How about this then? Would Superstar Graham been able to turn face? Because I believe he would have been. He had already done the impossible. Think about, of course, you're there. It's 1977. And he's doing the impossible for that time period. He's a bad guy that's getting cheers. Okay, that's impossible in 1977. But there he is doing a pre-Hogan of sorts, as Hogan himself has credited. So if you turn him face and you keep the belt on him, can we go to that alternate universe? What do you think would have happened if he turns face?
I think he would have been very successful. That would be my opinion. I don't know, but I think he would have been very successful. Here's something else that goes back to promoter and champion. Let's just say champion, your top guy. This goes way back to like the days of Hollywood and the studio system. And the question becomes, relating it to wrestling, would Hogan have been as successful as he was without McMahon's vision? And would McMahon's vision have worked with a different wrestler? Or did you need both together to make the perfect marriage?
Yeah.
Would would Katharine Hepburn, Gloria Swanson, whoever the old-time actresses were, would they have been successful outside of the studio system? Probably not.
Right.
Right place, here's
right time.
One thing that you can look at that's the closest, I think, to that. When you look at wrestlers that we're used to seeing in WWE today, and they leave WWE and they go over to AEW, they don't have the same support system in AEW that they have in WWE. Everything from what they wear, they're not coached on. How they act, you can say, we think WWE over micromanages their talent. But then when you see the talent given their own wishes and desires and carrying out things the way they think they should be carried out, you'd say, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea, because this guy has really shrunk, or this gal has really shrunk outside of the WWE system.
So Gary, now that you parlayed into that, we remember seeing you very early on the AEW days. You came out, did some ring announcing. What do you feel has gone wrong, if you do feel it's gone wrong, in AEW?
They have no leadership. They have no knowledgeable leadership, and they have no leadership at all. So I think that's why. I think it's an indie show with a multi-billion-dollar budget.
How about the mind itself? You mentioned leadership, and you've been around some of the greatest leaders in this business's history. We're talking Crockett. We're talking Vince Sr. You dealt with Junior. We're talking Gagne. What is Tony Khan missing? Is he just the fan who's running the asylum and the inmates are running the asylum? What is he missing that those previously mentioned great names in this business had that he doesn't? What's missing?
He doesn't know what he doesn't know. I don't know. Some people are born to book, and some people are not. And I just don't think he has it. I think that and maybe he would be appealing to the kind of a fan that he was, which was an uber fan, which was over the top kind of fan, that's what their life was, but that's not how most people consume wrestling. Most people don't know about what's going on in Japan. A lot of the younger people who are on the internet, more of them today now that they have more exposure to it. But if you watch an AEW show, all of a sudden someone comes in that you've never seen before, and they just assume that you know who this is. And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, I don't understand why they're so excited about this person. I've never heard of them before.
Right.
But you're uber fan like he was when he would, he still is. And how, as he grew up, they would know who he is. But that's an audience that's real tiny, and you need to expand your audience. Too often, I just think they're beating on each other, and I'm sitting there like scratching my head saying, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, if everybody's beating on everyone all the time, how can you ever have or build to something that's going to blow the roof off? If you try to blow the roof off every other segment on your TV show, it's like it doesn't work. It would be like me shouting at you all the time. How am I going to get your attention? If I'm a quiet guy and all of a sudden I shout, that'll get your attention. But if I'm shouting at you all the time, all of a sudden you just go numb to me. You just tune me out.
Gary, where's the creative?
Where's AEW? They tune out.
Where's the creative process at, though, in this company? When you think about AEW, like, where is their Goldberg? Where is their ability to shift and change? Where is their Undertaker? Where is their creativity? I believe that when you were there, if I'm not mistaken, you announced for Moxley versus Jericho. But this was 5 years ago. This is when Moxley versus Jericho, if I'm not mistaken, this is when those guys were truly valid. But we're looking at 5 years later, and they're still trying to push them at the top of the card. Where is their Goldberg? Where is their new star? So I'm asking you, what is it about the creative process where a guy like Vince McMahon will get completely pissed on, but when you think about his creative contributions to professional wrestling, I'm talking Junior, obviously, he's goddamn brilliant. He's brilliant. He has adjusted to every different time shift and change, whether it was Hulk Hogan, whether it was understanding to go to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, then to shift to Steve Austin and The Rock, then Lesnar, then Cena, then Roman Reigns, year after year after year, decade after decade, he always adjusted to change. So where's the creativity in Tony Khan, or at least with all his money? Why does he have the inability to realize I need someone who knows about this business to run this for me?
Because he thinks he does know about it. So he doesn't. I don't think he believes that he needs outside consultants. I don't know what I don't know what their inner workings are, or how they come up with what they come up with. So I can't comment on the process of. I can just comment on the product that they present, and it's just evident to me.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose
Jimmy
him?
there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Lost him. We just lost him.
Time to reboot. Wah, wah.
Well, I think he was saying, Jimmy, that, it's evident that he doesn't want to, doesn't want to take any advice. I mean, I was just about to talk about Jonathan Coachman said that Tony Khan has ghosted Shane McMahon after bombshell meeting. Last summer, AEW CEO Tony Khan and Shane McMahon met in Arlington, Texas airport to talk about pro wrestling. According to the former WWE broadcaster Jonathan Coachman, Shane McMahon made an erroneous request to Khan in a conversation as well, causing the latter to cut off the contact in the aftermath. So basically, Jimmy, what is being said by Jonathan Coachman is that Shane McMahon wanted full control over the organization.
Oh, really now?
Yeah. He's back. How are you, sir?
Interesting. Well, I don't know
That was
if
my
Gary...
fault, Mike.
No,
I
that's okay.
started to gesture and my hand hit the wire.
Warning! Warning!
So by the way, you guys had moved in. We're talking about outside interference, and we're discussing that Jonathan Coachman about a day ago said that Shane McMahon, when he was meeting with Tony Khan, wanted full control and over the organization and a certain amount of money, and Tony Khan went dark on him. Do you think, Gary, that Shane McMahon could help the AEW if Tony Khan was open to it?
I think that as long as Tony Khan has the final say as to what goes out on his TV, I think anyone else's contribution towards success would be limited.
I think that if
Shane needs to get out of the way.
I think that if Shane McMahon comes to you and you're actually, Mike, I got to tell you, if that was a serious thing and that really did occur, and you have Shane McMahon, who obviously must have some sort of chip on his shoulder regarding whatever's going on with him and his father's parent company, and no longer his father's parent company, I'd take that very seriously. So if Shane McMahon is looking at you and you're Tony Khan and you're not giving him full autonomy of running the business, you are an idiot, because Shane McMahon will definitely improve your product. I have that much faith in him. What do you think about Shane McMahon possibly, if he had been given the opportunity and Tony Khan did get out of the way, Gary? What do you think about Shane McMahon? Because I feel he would have done way better than what we're seeing. Just my opinion.
What do you want to get out of him? I guess it depends on what you expect. Like, we're talking about somebody who's known worldwide because of his WWE exposure. We're not talking about a wrestling technician. We're talking about someone who needs to be supported in the ring as far as the performance goes. The other thing is I don't know, if I was with AEW and I cared about AEW, why would I want the brother-in-law of my competitor backstage and in behind the scenes with my guys? And I don't understand. I'm missing something.
No, well,
to
be more specific, from what I'm understanding, Mike, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm understanding that this is a situation where Shane McMahon is talking about booking and having creative control of the roster. Now, Mike, if I'm wrong about that, then I'm just speculating. But I feel like if Shane McMahon had control of the roster and was given booking creativity to do what his father did, to attempt to do something like that in AEW, he is, after all, Vince's son. So if I'm Tony Khan, if the alternative is what I've been seeing, I'd rather see Shane give it a crack.
I think what we're getting out of this, though, is Gary is closer to the situation than we are.
Oh, absolutely.
It's basically, Tony Khan wants to do his own wrestling show, and he doesn't want to be told what to do, and he's going to have a good time, and that's his deal. Is that fair to say, Gary?
Yeah, the other thing that I think is essential is I don't know if Shane McMahon can book. What makes you think that he might be able to? He might be terrific. But just because you're the son of someone who was very successful in doing it doesn't mean you can be that successful. I don't know, once again, how the scenario
Is he frozen?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so, Captain. He's in freeze mode. Wait a minute.
He's back. He's
that
coming back.
Shane was involved in when he performed.
He's going in and out. It's like a Star Trek episode.
You all disappeared on me. So I don't know how gifted he is in booking it. Did you get that?
You said you don't know how gifted he is in booking, right? Gary, you there? There he is. He's back. Now he's back.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can see all
so you're just not confident in his booking. You're just not confident in his booking.
You're assuming that he's some kind of genius booker. You don't know that.
No.
Because
It's
his
not.
father was.
I'm not assuming that. I'm just hoping that at this point. I'm just telling it how I would go about doing it. In this situation, I feel like Tony Khan is absolutely clueless. This would just be my advice to him. Tony, you're absolutely clueless, but you have the resources. Since you've relied on WWE talent in the first place, and let's face it, their highest ratings were when Punk was there. The end. And Punk built his name in WWF. The end. So since you're beg, borrowing, and stealing from the mothership anyway, I would be willing to take the gamble. And I understand it's a gamble, but I still feel like he's got to have learned something in comparison to Tony Khan, the ultimate mark with money. I guess that's my point. That's all, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't know, because I have no idea. I have no idea how much input Shane had as to what he did when he was in WWE. In other words, I don't know if he booked that or not. I don't know. And maybe you would be able to book yourself well and not book others well, not be able to see gifts that other people have or hidden talents that other people have. It's a skill, and it's nothing you can go to a textbook to learn. A lot of it is some of it is trial and error, but a lot of it is instinct, and you're born with it or you're not.
Right. Just because you're a fan of something doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it, right? Speaking of fans, though, Gary, let me ask you this: being that you're in the business, when fans like Jimmy and myself use pro wrestling terminology, or even go a little deeper, does it bother you, someone that's been in the industry, that two schlubs like me and Jimmy could have a popular wrestling show and we weren't even involved in wrestling? We just used to watch it on TV.
Wait a minute.
And what are your thoughts on that whole thing, Gary? And be honest. It's okay. You won't hurt our feelings.
Are we schlubs?
Those are two different questions.
Boy.
The one question was that you guys have a podcast, and the other question had to do with using insider terminology. So, starting with the podcast part, I think it's great. There always were formats for fans to get together and talk about wrestling. Newsletters. Before the internet, people were pen pals. There were fan clubs. So yeah, I think that's there's nothing wrong with that. The terminology question, I know that things have changed and there is inherently nothing wrong with it, but yeah, it bothers me. But I think that's my problem.
Well, can you elaborate more, please? No, it does, but set us straight. Elaborate on that, please.
Well, I don't know what more is there to say. It was like I come from the era where everything was not out in the open, and so it's very difficult, and I know it's been years since that's changed. But you asked me a simple question, and I think that it's not so much of fans using the terminology; it's the fans that don't know what they're talking about and using the terminology. And by using the terminology, that's their way of saying, "See, I'm an expert."
Right.
I
Well,
think
okay.
that's what.
Let's have a little fun here then. Here I am. We're on this podcast.
I was
And I,
having fun. I've been having fun
no,
for a
no,
half
no.
hour.
But like, here's the thing. So if I turn around and say, hey, we're at a show or we're on a show, and I'll say, hey, Gary, I saw you at that last event, and I got to be honest with you, I thought that guy was a bit green. Would that drive you nuts?
Don't you work us.
No, because you're saying it to me.
Oh, okay.
You're saying
Yeah.
it. It depends on who's saying it and how.
Ah.
It's not that simple as someone's. It's not that simple. And I know
Gary?
that it's my problem. I'm not,
No, it's not just your problem, dude. It's a lot of other people's problems too. We have a lot of arguments and a lot of wrestlers about it. Bully Ray has been heard saying, if you've never taken a bump in the ring, you have no right to be using any of this terminology at all. And my only problem with that is, okay, but if we play by those rules, then if you like rock and roll, you better not start talking about riffs and this and that because you never played rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, I understand, Gary, how you could get upset with it because it's like it's your special thing, right? With growing when you guys were in it back then, it was a closed society that it was almost impossible to break through. And if you were lucky enough, you did. And now, and I mean this not even in a jokingly way. All these people got podcasts, everything people think they know everything, and I'm sure that it can drive you crazy, and I get that, but I just think there shouldn't be some kind of rules where people like you can't say anything. I mean, you're not part of it. You can't say anything. You can't do this. You can't do that. Because once you put those rules into place, then those rules have to apply everywhere else in the world, right? So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It depends on who's saying it, why they're saying it. Someone's using an insider term to put themselves over, and they're obviously an asshole, and they don't know what they're talking about. That I have a problem. Then I cringe. It's like then I don't even want I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with them.
What was your feelings when the curtain call happened? Let's go back to the mid '90s or so, a little bit earlier than that, when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Shawn Michaels are all, the infamous curtain call. Everything's got a point of origin, and basically this was when kayfabe took its fall. What were your feelings when that happened?
Yeah, I didn't have much of a reaction because I was removed from the product. I was definitely removed from WWE. I would put my feelings more in line, and this is going to make me sound even older than you're going back, to Bruno Sammartino's original reaction when when Vinny went before the legislature and said this is all a show. And I would that was back then though. I don't feel the same way now, but that was my initial reaction. If you look at any of the interviews that Bruno Sammartino did from back during that time when he was on the outs with Vinny, that would pretty much be how I felt.
Speaking on his problems with Vince, do you think that was partially Bruno's own problem because he was jealous how wrestling was advancing, or do you think he really had those feelings, or he just had a plain dislike for Vince McMahon? What are your thoughts?
The second two, he was genuine, and he genuinely disliked McMahon. He was genuine. He was genuine in how he saw things and expressed his. You can disagree. I'm not saying he was right about everything, but he spoke from his heart. You have to
Well,
remember that before Bruno Sammartino became champion, that Vince McMahon Sr. tried to drive him out of wrestling. He tried to blackball him so that he would never wrestle again. And Bruno had to leave the country because he couldn't get a booking in the United States because Vince McMahon Sr. called all of the major promoters to be sure that Bruno wouldn't get a booking. So Bruno went to Canada and he wrestled in Canada and amassed such a following in Canada that it pretty much forced McMahon Sr. to bring him back. So those are real deep cuts.
So forgive me for this, Gary, because I had never heard that story. I knew he was in Canada, and Vince brought him in because he's big. What was Vince's senior problem with Bruno? And then my second question would be, when Bruno did come back, did he still dislike Senior that whole time he was his champion?
Please clarify too. Is this his first run you're talking about before?
No,
63
before his first run, before 63.
This is before his first run, Mike. Go on, Mr. Cappetta.
Yeah, I think it's just that Bruno had a head on his shoulders and was a little independent, and McMahon Sr. He didn't want anyone that was independent. He wanted to be able to control everyone totally, and Bruno would just like speak his mind. This was before he was a headliner. He was like a mid-carder or a supporting player on his way up. So so McMahon Sr. just wanted to get I'll show you who has the power, who has the strength, and and then he blackballed him.
So to drive it home, he basically cornered the market and forced Bruno back one way or the other. Fair enough?
I'm not sure that I understand what that means. What do you mean corner the market?
Well, by shutting off every other promotion, what are you doing? You're closing the market. You're cornering the market. So basically, he sealed off any other entrance point and said the only entrance back is me. Just hammering it home.
Yeah, he blackballed him. That's the easiest way to put it. Bruno talks about it I think he may have had more than one book, but in his first book, he talks about the whole situation and how he had to go to Canada to develop a following. There are a lot of Italians that lived in Toronto. I think it was in Toronto was where he went. And he just became a sensation. Now McMahon Sr. has a very ethnic fan base between New York and Philadelphia and Boston and Pittsburgh. So that kind of appeal, turned out to be huge for McMahon Sr.
Do you think that history has been soft to Vince McMahon Sr.? Because Mike and I have always heard great things about Vince McMahon Sr. from other wrestlers we've had on that worked with him and what a gentleman he was. But what you're telling us tonight, this is something that Junior would be crucified for. Any thoughts on that? I mean, does history take a pass on Senior? Because it seems like in general, Senior is certainly not being hit with the bullets that Junior is. Because if Junior did something like this would be another crucifixion on the internet. I can tell you that much. Your thoughts?
Because Junior was in your face about it. Junior he was arrogant before he had any power. He was arrogant when I worked with him and he did the TV when he was, Daddy's announcer. So, but McMahon Sr. was more genteel. He was more of a gentleman. He dressed a certain way. He spoke a certain way. He was very soft in his mannerisms. But that didn't mean that he couldn't be a harsh competitor. We'll put it that way. I'll give
Yeah,
you another story. I'll give you McMahon Sr. story. You ready?
let's hear it. Yep.
I was announcing their TV out of the Philadelphia arena. It was Championship Wrestling. It was the one that was on WOR Channel 9 in New York and syndicated throughout the region. And I thought that I should have been making more money. So I decided that I was going to ask for a raise. And the only time that I ever got to see the McMahons was at the TVs. So I found out that the person I should speak to was McMahon Sr. And they had this little office. You know what? It wasn't at the arena. It was at the Philly. It was at the Philadelphia. No, it was at the Hamburg Fieldhouse. They had this little office between the two dressing rooms, and that's where McMahon Sr. would hang out with Arnold Skolin and Gorilla Monsoon and Phil Zacco and sometimes Angelo Savoldi. So here I am, a 27-year-old kid, and I didn't know that you weren't supposed to ask for a raise. I didn't know that the 270-pound headliners would be afraid to ask for a raise. What did I know? I just thought that I should have made more money. And I was probably getting like $60 for the night, which was 3 hours of television. And in my mind, I had an answer for a comeback for whatever he was going to tell me. For whatever he was going to say to me, I had a comeback. So I go, knock on the door. Yeah. I open the door, and he looks at me. They look at me like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't belong here. I said, can I speak to you for a second? And I told him that I thought I should be making more money. And he said, well, how much money do you think you should be making? I said, oh, probably $100, like a night. And he said to me the one thing that I actually could never anticipate, so I had no comeback for. He looked at me and he said, I can't do that. I can't afford it.
Wow. And you're like, oops.
This is the guy that controls Boston wrestling, New York wrestling, Pittsburgh wrestling, Baltimore wrestling, Philadelphia wrestling, Washington, D.C. wrestling, and everything in between. He's a gazillionaire. Sorry, I can't afford it. I was speechless. So I left. I turned around, I walked out. But that's not the end of the story. We got paid in cash at the end of the night. And at the end of the night, when I got my envelope, there wasn't $60 in the envelope. He gave me the raise. The $100 was there. It's just that, and this is a McMahon thing, his son was the same way. They could never tell you that you do a good job or show anything, that you're a valued employee. But he told Phil Zacco, give him the raise, and every 3 weeks after that, I got the higher amount of money.
Wow.
He just couldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me because he didn't want me to think that I was, a bigger guy, or he wanted everyone to be insecure is what it came down to.
It was a tactic. That's a great story, Gary. Let me ask you this. We all know what's going on with Vince McMahon Jr. You've had your run-ins with him, but I really want to know what Gary Michael Cappetta thinks of Vince McMahon Jr. and all the scandals that have happened under his regime, from the Jimmy Snuka, Nancy Argentino supposed murder, ring boy scandal, steroid trial, the Rita Charlton accusations, and again, most recently, the Janelle Grant stuff. What are your thoughts on this total situation? Again, Mr. McMahon has never been found guilty of any of these accusations, which in this country means a lot. But you're close to it. You knew the man. I don't, at least to a certain level. What are your thoughts on the whole situation with Vince McMahon Jr.?
Right. Well, I can't. I can't comment on any of the lawsuits that have yet to be, adjudicated. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. Um, the the ring boy thing. It's not. The question isn't whether or not it happened. It's whether or not he was aware that it happened. So I don't know what he was aware of. Um, the sexual accusations, the sexual abuse accusations. You know, all I can tell you is that the guy that I knew, and it's been years. The last time I saw him was at San Martino's funeral. So that was a long time ago. And then before that, it was decades before that. So I don't know the Vince McMahon Jr. of today, or even of 15 years ago. He was an arrogant young guy who worked for his daddy back when I worked with the family, and that's he didn't necessarily treat me well, but yeah, I wasn't. I'm not that sensitive. I wasn't looking for affirmation, of my goodness from him. All I wanted to do was to announce wrestling,
Right, yeah.
Gary, what do you recall? I mean, I know you were already gone when the Ring Boy scandal happened, as far as timeline goes, but you were there, unfortunately, as far as timing goes, when Snuka was allegedly involved in the murder, as Mike Prefor mentioned. Do you remember getting any rumblings of that? What was your exposure
No.
to it? Did you hear anything about it? What was your gut read on that
That
horrible,
happened.
unfortunate
Yeah, I mean that
situation?
happened before and after the show that we did that night. But I was totally unaware for years that anything had happened. So
Amazing.
I just didn't know about it.
It's amazing the stories that you hear. Like how do you feel about shows like Dark Side of the Ring or the Territory Days? Do you feel that ripping the curtain open and telling these stories and these dark stories, um, does it bother you, being that you love wrestling so much, or do you think it needs to be told?
I don't really think there's much to reveal. I mean, you can go on YouTube and get shoot interviews and then probably hear all these stories. I just they're packaged, to for the consumer, so that a topic is handled in an hour. But I don't look at them as being sensational or
Right.
informative. It's nothing that I think there's not much left that can be revealed.
I was
And
laughing.
and let's, to the core of it, nothing for those that have been in the business for a long time and have a problem with the revelations over the years. The only way things were revealed was because the wrestlers themselves revealed them. So, the same people that are having a heart attack about these old stories are the ones that profited from talking about them, getting paid to do these shoot interviews.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, where else would these stories come from? They came from the guys.
I was laughing with Jimmy. I said the future shoot interview with these guys, not a wrestling now. It's like, so you got any good road stories? They're like, yeah, I went to the gym, had a healthy meal, and I went to bed.
Yes. Yeah.
Before we hit you with the
Yeah.
Farrell's final question, a couple of things. I want to ask you, how was your relationship with Andre the Giant?
Oh, I had a good relationship with Andre. The last time I saw him was September, October, November, December, 4 months before he passed. He came down to Atlanta and did a WCW show. Could you hold on a second? I want to get something. I think I know where it is.
Yeah, no problem.
To show you, having to do with what we're talking about. Okay?
Absolutely, no problem.
You guys talk for like 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
That's what we'll do.
Michael, how are you? I'm well.
Jimmy, I gotta tell you, I love it. I love when Gary's on the show. He's got such knowledge, and he's
Yeah.
so honest about everything. You know what I'm saying?
I can't believe that nobody said a word to him back when that was going on with Snooker. I'm
Well,
like
dude,
baffled.
sometimes I
But it
think to
makes sense.
myself, you
Not
may know.
everybody's in the loop, you know.
I don't
Gary's
even know.
definitely
I
not
don't
in
even
the
know
loop.
if it's about being in a loop. I think maybe sometimes you just don't even care.
Well, that's
You know what I
true
mean?
too.
Okay.
Like it's
my
like
bad.
I'm here to do my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gary's back. Let's hear. Ooh, look
What's
at
he
that.
got?
This
Wow.
was
Ah.
that night. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was that night in Atlanta, the last time I saw Andre. It was a TBS special that we broadcast live from center stage. After this live show, we went next door. It actually was part of center stage, like the complex, and they had a bar and they had a party, and so I walked in and Bruno and Andre were sitting at the bar, and I interrupted them. He said, "Hey guys, how you doing?" George Napolitano was passing. I said, "George, get a picture." And this is actually the second take. The first take, we're sitting there, and 3, 2, 1, and Andre goes like that, his hand over my face. So he thought that was really funny. I cannot find that picture though. I would rather have that picture than this picture.
And you said
But
this was about 3 or 4 months before he passed.
yeah, what would that be, like 93?
Mhm.
This was
Let me-
September, I think he passed in January of 94 or 93.
Well, let me ask you: when you saw him at the bar, did you feel like he was unhealthy, or did he look okay to you?
He was having difficulty walking, but in general, he seemed okay. He was in good spirits, and like complexion wise, facially, he looked okay. But he had a cane and he had difficulty getting around.
Wow. I got to tell you, man, you are blessed. What a life you've lived.
Yes.
So, Gary, what are we doing now? What are you doing now? Do you have anything to promote? Again, thank you for joining the show. You're just an incredible guest every time you're on.
Yeah. I moved to Florida from New Jersey, and I was accustomed to independent wrestling shows somewhere in either New Jersey or New York, one of the boroughs, or Delaware or Eastern Pennsylvania. And there's just not that much wrestling in the area of Florida where I live. The best wrestling that I have found is starting in May. I'm not promoting or have anything to do with it, other than I have friends that are running it, and they're my friends because I endorse the kind of wrestling that they're putting on. And I'll give them a plug. It's going to be the second Friday of every month, starting in May, in Winter Haven, Florida, at Tanner's. So people need to check that out. But what I'm thinking is it's possible that I might promote a couple of shows in Northern Florida because we need good independent wrestling, especially in the part of Florida where I'm living. Like there's a lot of wrestling in Orlando and Tampa and in South Florida. But up here, it's really dry. And I have to drive like 2.5, 3 hours to see a wrestling show.
Wow.
And that's not acceptable.
That is.
That's just not acceptable.
You got to fill that
If
vacuum.
it means I
You got
have
to
to
fill that
promote a
vacuum.
show to be able to go to a show that I can enjoy, I'll promote it. And
There you
that's
go.
the way it is.
Yeah.
Palm Coast, Florida. When you start
Anyway,
promoting, I'm going to come down there. So, yeah, down there would be the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Gary, just so you know, I don't
Cool.
know, we've had so many great people on our show over the last years. Jimmy moved to Florida. We had Karen McDaniel as a guest, and Jimmy and Karen fell in love, and now Jimmy is married to Karen McDaniel.
That's not on the
Gary's
script.
like,
That's
what?
not on the script. I don't see it on the script. Where was that?
Wow.
And he's actually shooting at a
When did
Wahoo
that
saloon
happen?
right now.
Yeah, it's over there. The sign. Yeah.
How long have
right
you been
there.
married?
Uh,
How long have you
a
been
little
married?
less than a year. May of this year, past year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a small world. Thanks for putting me on the spot there, Mike.
So, Gary, that means that Jimmy can use the word green and all that other stuff because he's in the biz now. All right. We're gonna hit you with something called the Pharaoh's final question. This is unscripted. Jimmy's gonna hit you with it and go away there, Jimmy.
All right, here we go.
This whole thing's been unscripted.
Absolutely. Getting back to an earlier topic of influence on the business, and your answer was Hulk Hogan. I'm going to go there. Recently, Hulk Hogan came back to a WWE event. I would think you might be aware of the situation. It was one of the Netflix shows, and the crowd chose to boo Hogan for past transgressions, which he's publicly apologized for. I really don't know at this point why you would want to boo Hogan out of the building, if I could get my opinion in, which I always seem to do. Sorry, GMC. But what are your feelings about today's generation with the booing of somebody like Hulk Hogan, knowing the historical importance? It's not like he killed somebody. What's your take on today's generation being so harsh?
I had a different take on this.
Okay, here we go.
You're assuming.
Oh no, I'm assuming again. No, I'm not. It's just my personal
you do
opinion.
a lot of assuming. You assume a lot.
Well, okay, go ahead. Fair enough. Time to get married. Let me get my shovel. Go ahead.
They're assuming, that it had to do with that videotape thing and the court case, and I thought, but no, I've never heard anyone bring this up. Is it possible? And I'm not. First off, wait. Let me answer your general question. I think the fans should boo whoever the fans want to boo.
Oh, I agree with that in premise. I do. Go on.
Okay.
I do.
I would have guessed that they were booing him because just a few days before he was in Madison Square Garden with President Trump. And
okay.
I thought that might have been the reason, but I don't know.
All right.
And I'm not saying I think they should boo him for that reason. I don't see that that's a reason to boo him, but that was the most recent, most visible time for Hogan. You know what I'm saying? Like, who had seen Hogan before that? So that it was like the same week that he came out and was with the president. So I don't know.
It's a tangled web, Mike.
You don't like my answer, do you? He doesn't like my answer.
Is it?
Monty, will you help me out here? He's bullying me.
No,
listen. I'm gonna.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. Can I get a word in edgewise here? Here we go. Here's my evaluation of the situation.
Yeah.
I believe that the podcaster, these people like Jimmy and myself, for some reason, are getting a larger voice in the IWC community. The IWC. And it's very popular now to hate on Hulk Hogan, right? Because he's left himself open, but beyond all this, the major stuff, he tells a couple of fibs every so often, like he was supposed to be in Metallica, or he did this or he did that, and he gets called out on these stories. And again, we're all getting older. I'm older. I don't remember things that I did when I was 20-something. In fact, I imagine them being totally different. So I get it. But these are all young people, and they're like, you're a liar. No, we just don't remember. That's the issue here. So
Metallica?
I think that's the – listen, in his mind,
Metallica?
Maybe he thought he was in Metallica. I don't know.
Come on now.
What do you think of that, Gary? What do you think of that answer?
What I think is, are you challenging my story about asking for a raise from McMahon Sr.? Because I was.
No, I'm not saying it's not true, but in actuality, you might not have gotten $100. It might have been $61.50. But we got it. As we get older, we exaggerate. You know what I mean?
And it might
He
have been
was
100
worth
and a half,
100.
too.
What are you getting at?
It could have been 100 and a half. Absolutely. You know
Hey,
what I
that
mean?
wasn't bad in
man.
$1978.
What does that
Let me
equate to
figure
now? See, what is
$1978.
100? What does $100 equate to now from
What do you
back
think?
then?
What do you
I don't
think?
know. I need to go online to figure that out.
Yeah, we need that
Um,
calculator, but I think it's probably about $800, man. It's not a bad payday. What are you thinking, Gary? You're making
No,
800
especially
bucks
for
to
that.
announce for
No.
I
3
think
hours.
he's still getting gypped. What are you talking about? You're
I got
that's terrible, man.
I got to ask you this now before we go. How was
Yeah,
Verne
you know
Gagne
what?
tortured?
Considering the wrestlers didn't get paid anything for those TVs, it wasn't bad.
Oh
But
my
go
God,
ahead.
they did. Oh,
What?
how was Verne
No, because
Gagne
the idea,
tortured? How was Verne Gagne tortured?
Verne he was aces. He was very good toward me, very generous.
More than $100?
He brought me out. No. He paid me well. He brought me
Wow.
out for 2 pay-per-views.
There
Is
we
that what you
go.
said? Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I
He
was
brought me
saying
out
more than
for
$100. I was hoping more than $100,
yeah.
Gary. You know.
These are pay-per-views I did. The one Wrestle Rock at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome
Yeah,
and
wow.
Super Clash 3 in Chicago. And then I announced for him on a regular basis in Atlantic City for his ESPN show, the debut of that show before it moved to Las Vegas. Yeah, he was always good to me.
All right,
No complaints about him.
now I have to ask another question because you just keep on bringing stuff that's interesting. Super Clash 3. So I believe that's Kerry Von Erich, Jerry Lawler, right? How was Kerry
Right.
Von? I'm a huge Kerry Von Erich fan. Huge Kerry Von Erich fans in general. How was Kerry Von Erich and your experiences with Kerry?
I didn't have many experiences with Carrie. The humdinger all though that night. He arrived with his daughter, who I think might be wrestling now, or maybe was wrestling or
Yeah, she was. She
something.
was wrestling. That's Lacey Von Erich. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was loaded. And I remember, so we're in the locker room, and we're sitting on folding chairs. And so he's sitting across from me. And I was a little uncomfortable with his young daughter in the locker room, but he wasn't, she wasn't. So, and no one said anything. So, because the guys are there in all states of undress.
Right.
So, so I thought, well, maybe I'll like start a conversation. We had never met. So I tried to have a conversation with him, and it didn't work out too well because, like, I would ask him a question, and his answer had nothing to do with the question. It was so, and in the meantime, as I'm trying to have a conversation, as I'm trying to talk to him, he's lacing up his boots, his wrestling boots, and when he finishes, he sits back and looks at me, gives me a very nice smile, stands up, and falls flat on his face. And the reason that he fell flat on his face is that when he was lacing up his wrestling boots, the laces were going around the leg of the chair. So he was tying himself to the chair, and when he got up, he just went boom. Anyway, and that was the
could
night that
you
he cut himself under his arm before he wrestled.
could you
He
define
had the
could you
blade.
define loaded? Define loaded. You
No,
said
I
loaded,
can't be. I can't because I wasn't there when he got loaded, so I don't know what he
Wait.
but
was
he
So
was
doing.
loaded.
Jimmy, I got to ask Gary though. So when he cuts himself, when he had his
Oh.
blade, and that's how he cut underneath his arm.
Yeah, he forgot that he had he had taped the blade to his finger, and he was itchy, so he went to scratch himself, and he just sliced himself.
And they had to work that into the match, right? Because they
Yeah,
couldn't get it patched up, right?
right.
Wow. That's an incredible story. By the way, what did you think of the movie The Iron Claw? Did you have a chance to watch it?
I did not see it.
Okay.
I did not see it.
All right, Jimmy. Well, Gary, thanks again. You're the best. We love having you on. Thank you for what you've done for the industry. Thank you for all you've done. You're quite the gentleman. Jimmy, you want to send us out, please?
Yes, sir.
It's
You've been
fun,
watching.
guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank
Most
you again,
welcome.
Gary.
Most welcome. And better than Samantha Irvin, you've been watching Monty and the Pharaoh with the great Gary Michael Cappetta. Till next time, later.